The masked ritual. The town of Blackthorn was known for its peculiar traditions, but none were as shrouded in secrecy as the annual masquerade of the woods. Every autumn, when the first frost kissed the ground, the townsfolk gathered to don masks carved from blackened oak and perform a ritual deep in the forest. Outsiders dismissed it as a harmless celebration of their heritage, but those who had lived in Blackthorn long enough knew better. Emma, a newcomer, had recently inherited her late aunt's cottage on the outskirts of town. The masquerade was the first thing she'd heard about upon her arrival. Her neighbor, an elderly man named Walter, had leaned over her garden fence one evening and warned her, "When the frost comes, stay inside. Lock your doors, close your windows, and don't look outside no matter what you hear." Emma had laughed it off as local superstition. She wasn't about to let a folktale dictate her actions. Yet as the date drew closer, she couldn't shake the feeling of unease. The townspeople's excitement was palpable, but unnervingly subdued, like an undercurrent of dread running through their polite smiles. On the night of the masquerade, Emma's curiosity got the better of her. She wrapped herself in a thick coat, slipped on sturdy boots, and ventured into the woods. The air was crisp, and the ground crunched underfoot as she followed the faint glow of lanterns in the distance. Shadows of masked figures danced between the trees, their faces obscured by intricate wooden carvings. The masks were unnervingly lifelike, each resembling an animal with hollow eyes that seemed to stare straight through her. She stayed hidden, crouched behind a tree as the ritual began. The participants formed a circle around a large stone altar. Chanting rose in a language Emma didn't recognize, a low guttural rhythm that sent shivers down her spine. One by one, they placed offerings on the altar. Bundles of herbs, small carved trinkets, and vials of an unidentifiable liquid. Then silence fell. A figure in a stag mask stepped forward, its antlers impossibly large and twisted. It raised a hand, and the crowd fell to their knees. The air grew thick, the temperature dropping sharply as frost crept across the ground. The stag-masked figure spoke in a deep, resonant voice. "The forest hungers. A life must be given." Emma's breath caught. Her heart pounded as she realized the ritual wasn't symbolic. A young woman, trembling but silent, was led to the altar. She wore no mask, her pale face a stark contrast to the shadowed crowd. Emma wanted to scream, to intervene, but her legs refused to move. The chanting resumed, louder and more frantic. The stag-masked leader produced a dagger, its blade glinting coldly in the moonlight. Emma turned away, unable to watch, but the girl's piercing scream tore through the night. Then silence. Utter, deafening silence. When Emma dared to look again, the crowd was gone. The altar was empty, save for the girl's mask, now smeared with blood. Emma stumbled back toward her cottage, her mind reeling. She locked the doors and closed the curtains, but sleep eluded her as the girl's scream echoed in her ears. The next morning, the townsfolk acted as if nothing had happened. Children played in the streets, shopkeepers greeted her warmly, and no one mentioned the masquerade. But Emma knew what she had seen. She considered fleeing Blackthorn, but something kept her rooted, a mix of morbid curiosity and a strange sense of belonging. Weeks passed, and Emma's life returned to a semblance of normalcy. Then one frosty morning, she found a mask on her doorstep. It was carved from blackened oak, intricately detailed with the face of a fox. Attached was a note. "Your turn." Emma's hands trembled as she held the mask. She knew what it meant. The forest hungered, and it would not be denied. The frost seemed to deepen around her cottage, the air heavy with an unspoken command. She was no longer an observer. She was now part of the ritual. That night, Emma donned the fox mask and walked into the woods.